Why? Do you think maybe some of this had to be a spanking from God because you're messing with Israel? Oh, I think so. And you see that consistently in our track record. America has faced a bunch of disasters every single time we go against Israel. Let me give you some of that proof, right? 1979, Carter administration chose not to veto UN Resolution 446, which caused Israel to give up a tremendous amount of territory. 2 days later, the worst nuclear power plant in U.S. history made headlines, 3 Mile Island. You think that was by chance? I don't think so. 1991, President George H.W. Bush Sr., he told Israel that territorial compromise is essential for peace. At the exact same time, the perfect storm was brewing in the North Atlantic. It traveled 1,000 miles in the wrong direction, sent 35-foot waves slamming directly into where? President Bush's home in Kennebunkport, Maine. You know what I call that? I call that God going, nanny, nanny, boo-boo in Jesus' name, right? Don't mess with Israel, right? Let's keep going. 1992, the Madrid Peace Conference was moved to Washington, D.C. The next day, Hurricane Andrew went into Florida, caused $30 billion of damage. It was the worst natural disaster in U.S. history at that time. 1994, Clinton years. He met with President Assad of Syria to discuss the possibility of Israel giving up the Golan Heights. Within 24 hours, the devastating Northridge earthquake hit Southern California. It was the second worst natural disaster up to that time in U.S. history. 1998, Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, he comes over to the White House. He received a cold reception. Listen to this. They totally snubbed him. Clinton and Secretary of State at that time, Madeleine Albright, actually refused to have lunch with him. Can you imagine that? Watch what happened. The exact same day, the Monica Lewinsky scandal broke out, sending Clinton's presidency into a tailspin that he would never recover. You want to treat Israel like that? Watch this, pal. I'll bring out one of the things you're doing behind the scenes. Okay? 1998, Secretary of State Madeleine Albright again was working on finalizing a plan that would have had Israel give up 13% of Judea and Samaria. On that precise day, here comes Hurricane George slamming into the Gulf, 170 miles an hour winds. Okay? 1999, Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat, he's supposed to hold a press conference to declare the creation of a Palestinian state with Jerusalem as their capital. On that precise day, the most powerful tornadoes ever recorded in the United States ripped through Oklahoma and Kansas, and at one point they were 316 miles an hour, the exact same day. 2003, remember the roadmap to peace? When that came out, watch this. It had been developed and has been presented to Israel over the next 7 days. When they brought that out, the U.S. was hit by 412 tornadoes. It was the largest tornado cluster at that time. It was crazy. 2005, George Bush Jr. convinced Israel it was necessary to remove all the Jewish settlers out of Gaza and turn it over entirely to the Palestinians. Still dealing with the results of that. And guess what happened? Hurricane Katrina. Right after that, folks, comes slamming in, the costliest disaster in U.S. history at that time. 2011, Barack Obama, he actually had the audacity to tell Israel they must return to the pre-1967 borders. Can you believe that? And then 3 days later, here comes a half-mile-wide tornado ripped through Joplin, Missouri. Do you think all that was by chance? You got to put two and two together. It was the costliest single tornado disaster in U.S. history. And to me, it's like somebody's not reading their Bible. Go back to Genesis. God still honors his promise he made to the Jewish people with Abraham. Genesis 12:3, I will bless those who bless you, Israel, and I'll what? I'll curse those who curse you, including the United States of America, any country. Don't mess with Israel. God's not done with them, all right? And this is why the Jewish people are absolutely in love with our president, okay? And they're saying he's the best thing that has ever happened, especially after the Obama years. But let's take a look at this.
Here are 4 reasons why Israelis favor Trump policies. 1. The Iran deal would have allowed the Iranian mullah regime, a world terror sponsor, whose stated goal is to eradicate Israel, to enrich uranium and build a nuclear bomb. I want that. Not good, not good. President Trump and his team put an end to this madness. That took guts. 2. The UN has been pushing an anti-Israel agenda through its various arms, and we Israelis have been living with their pernicious lies. For example, UNESCO. Now, this is the UN body in charge of World Heritage Sites, but absurdly, they claim that the Tomb of Rachel, the Temple Mount, and the Tomb of the Patriarchs in Hebron are Palestinian heritage sites.
That's worse than fake news. That's fake history.
UNRWA. It's the UN body dedicated to perpetuating Palestinian refugees. Not only did they fail to settle the old refugees, they managed to create new ones by including their descendants in the same category, thus making sure that the problem will never be solved. Guess what? Under Trump, the US pulled out of UNESCO, left the Human Rights Council, and defunded UNRWA. 3. So the Palestinian Authority allocates about $400 million annually to pay terrorists and their families. Pay for slay. The more Jews you kill, the more money you get. Finally, the U.S. administration has decided to stop handing over U.S. taxpayer money to these thugs. And finally, Jerusalem. For thousands of years, Jews have been praying to return to Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. And so we did. In his historic declaration, President Trump recognized this ancient fact, and by moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, helped make it a reality today. That's huge! So, for these 4 reasons and more, it's hard for us here in Israel to see Trump as anti-Jewish or anti-Israel. And remember that when America blesses Israel, it gets blessed right